Yo YouTube, we got a new video for you guys today. It's nothing crazy, it's nothing new, but it's something that's been on my mind lately. I've been thinking about how the Sonic games have had some type of bad reception, and not to say that the new games are bad. I actually think they're pretty good, but I feel like there's something that's missing from these games that used to really separate these games from like what they used to be. One of the biggest things that I think that the new games are missing is that signature move. The boost has been something that's been primarily featured in these games over the last couple years, but what really revolutionized Sonic? What was that signature move that really just took it to the next level? To me, I personally think that's the spin dash. So I went over to Green Hill to talk to my boy Sonic about the spin dash and kind of just give you guys a little bit of a history of what this move is and how it really revolutionized the games. I really also just want to make my pitch for this move to come back to the game and explain to you guys why I still play the classic games to this day, but the newer games don't really hold that replayability. So we're going to give you guys a little history of the spin dash and why this sometimes game-breaking mechanic is really good. So what is the spin dash? This was originally introduced in Sonic 2. Interestingly enough, Tails might have actually been the inventor of the spin dash, which is kind of crazy to think about. There's this theory going around because this ability was featured in the Tails Adventure game, which canonically took place before Sonic 2, where Tails met Sonic and Sonic learned the spin dash. There's this theory that Tails is actually the godfather of the spin dash. But anyways, that's just a little fun fact. Let's get back to what the spin dash is. Basically, Sonic curls up into a little ball, and if you look over here, he actually just moves really fast and is able to gain momentum not naturally. So typically in the older games, he was just able to spin into a ball, but he entirely relied on momentum. With this new mechanic, he's able to pick up momentum really fast and unnaturally. So you just press the button, he gets into the ball, he spins, and he just goes. Now this ability has several uses. Aside from just picking up speed, it can be used as an attack, and it really gets you out of tricky situations. Not only that, you can use it to find new paths in the level. This is more prominent in the adventure games, but I'll show you some of the scenarios you might want to use this. You might be trapped at a point where you cannot advance forward with natural momentum. Momentum is one of the biggest things of the classic Sonic games, and oftentimes you might find that if you don't have it, you really can't do anything. So I'm stuck at the bottom of this platform. The only way I can get to the top is if I pick up enough speed. How am I going to do that, you might ask? Well, obviously I'm going to use the spin dash. That easily allows me to pick up enough speed to get over this obstacle. For all intents and purposes, the spin dash basically allows the player to achieve top speed, even though they're at a standstill. For that alone, this feature is just so useful. And this feature is just so iconic. The spin dash has basically been in every mainline and spin-off Sonic game over the last like 20 years. Only up until recently with Colors and Unleashed, they really stopped using this in the mainline games. But just think about the impact that the spin dash had. Wikipedia says Sonic 2's success was a major factor in Sega catching up to Nintendo in the early 1990s console wars. It brought up their market share up to 40% within 6 months of its release. And this is no surprise. Amongst other things with Sonic 2, by far the biggest new addition was the spin dash. Sonic 2 is also a really fun game, and they really expanded on the level design. They added Tails, added some new boss fights, and really started to shape a lore even though it's a 2D game. But make no mistake, the spin dash was definitely one of the major revolutionary changes of that game. I don't think you have the same level of success with Sonic 2 without the spin dash. And pretty much in any form of multimedia you see Sonic in, he's always going to have the spin dash as his primary signature move. Whether it's the Sonic movie, you see him use a spin dash there where he rolls into a ball. Sonic X, the spin dash is one of his most powerful moves. And even in the Super Smash Bros. Series, the spin dash is one of his primary moves. Even though it's not really featured as much as modern Sonic's main moveset anymore, make no mistake, this is his most iconic move by far. The spin dash will always be synonymous with Sonic. So yeah, basically throughout the 90s, the spin dash was used in just about every single Sonic game. And when I say every Sonic game, I mean every single Sonic game. But towards the end of the 90s, when innovation was required, Nintendo 64 was out and killing everyone. Sony was coming out with their PlayStation. There was one game that changed it all when it came to the spin dash. So the game that changed it all was Sonic Adventure 1. The spin dash in this game is peak spin dash. I don't think we'll ever replicate this or really ever get it back to what it was, because after this game, they never really quite found that formula again for the spin dash. It was attempted several times after, and it's in still a lot of Sonic games after, but it really never quite was able to capture the magic of what it did in this game. At first look, it's like, what is the spin dash? You charge up, you want to gain some speed and go fast. You might even use it for the occasional attack on an enemy. That's probably what the developers intended for it to be. If you play the game that way, it's fine. You'll still have a lot of fun with Sonic Adventure. But this game has a very key, distinct difference from the spin dash of old, and the spin dash that followed after. As you can see here, we have unlimited spin dash. There is no time in between spin dashes, and you can use it as much as you want, and it really opens up the level design for these games. This allows for new shortcuts and skips that will literally, I'm not even kidding, allow you to skip like half of the levels. You're shaving what amounts to like 1 to 2 minutes off of your runs, and it really makes a huge difference. There is no better example than in Speed Highway. If you look right here, I can spin dash to the top of the building using momentum, which is cool enough in itself, and then I find a life box up here. Not only that, you can spin dash and literally skip the entire level. If you look right here, and if you know what Speed Highway is, you would just see that I literally just skipped the entire level of Speed Highway, and we're basically done with it already. This in itself is so cool, and it really opens up the game for you, and if you haven't played this way, I highly recommend you replay this game and go use a spin dash and try and find shortcuts. You will find that you're almost playing an entirely different game, and that you're still finding new paths to this day. I swear, using a spin dash is like taking a huge shot of dopamine to the brain. If you perfectly execute a nice shortcut or a cool spin dash that allows you to get a lot of height, a lot of speed, or just find a new path, it literally feels like you just took the biggest shot of dopamine straight to your brain. For that reason alone, I will always find myself playing Sonic Adventures levels. There's no incentive to replay. For the most part, there's no ranking system and there's a very scant medal system, but something about this spin dash keeps me coming over and over and over again trying to beat my best times, and it's almost like a drug. So yeah, there's nothing more satisfying in any Sonic game in my opinion than using the spin dash in SA1. It's a shame that they haven't really quite been able to replicate this because it really peaked in 1999. I really wish that they were able to at least replicate this and bring this back in another game in the same capacity. The unlimited spam dash is something that's just so awesome. Being able to find all these shortcuts and skips and power-ups is something that made this game great. It's still used in pretty much every other game after. The only game that really does it good after in terms of 3D is probably Sonic Adventure 2, but they significantly nerfed it because you have to charge it up and you can't use it unlimitedly. It's still good in Sonic Adventure 2 and it still primarily functions the same way, but you have to say that it is worse because you don't have that unlimited spin dash factor, and the level design's a lot more linear, so you're not going to really find yourself breaking the game as much. In the advanced games and the rush games, they did it pretty good through the following years, but in Sonic Heroes, that's really where the spin dash kind of fell off, and they really tried experimenting with it, probably for the worse. Sonic Heroes reinvented the spin dash for this team-based mechanic, and they actually renamed it the Rocket Excel, which essentially is a spin dash, just with a different name, and the functionability is a little bit different as well. I actually didn't hate the Rocket Excel, and I thought it was pretty cool that they tried to put their own little touch to it, but there's no arguing that this was not as good as Sonic Adventure 1 and Sonic Adventure 2. In the following years in the 3D games, they almost completely nerf it or just abandon it altogether. Between not only the bad reception in Shadow the Hedgehog and the spin dash, and the bad reception and spin dash in Sonic 06, it's no surprise they went into a different direction for the games overall. Not saying that they completely abandoned the spin dash, but as far as 3D mainline games, they pretty much completely abandoned the spin dash. As I said before, even after those two games, they still did use the spin dash, primarily in the 2D games and some of the spin-offs. But starting with Sonic Unleashed, they really did start to move away from that from the modern Sonic moveset. I can't really argue against it because at the time, this kind of was the change that we need. We really needed to go in a completely different direction after 06. And some of the games that did feature the spin dash after, like Sonic 4, really didn't receive that well, and then Colors came out after and it did really well and did not feature the spin dash. Now Sonic Generations is interesting. The main attraction to this game is definitely the modern Sonic gameplay. When you think of why this game is good, you think of the 3D levels and definitely not the classic Sonic levels, while some people might like them. But once again, the spin dash is noticeably absent, at least in the 3D levels. As you guys know, classic Sonic is in this game and he has the spin dash, but I still really didn't like these levels. But if there's one redeeming quality about the 2D classic Sonic levels, it probably is the spin dash. In this game, instead of putting your head down and charging it up like right here, you actually can activate the spin dash automatically by just pressing the X button if you're on Xbox. This definitely makes these levels a lot more fun, even though I still really do not enjoy them. I do think this is a redeeming quality, and this is where they kind of make the distinction between modern Sonic and classic Sonic's moveset, which essentially accounts for modern Sonic abandoning the spin dash, and hopefully it does make a return in future games. Now here's where it gets interesting. For the first time in almost 7 years, they finally bring back the spin dash in a mainline 3D game. But once again, they missed the mark. It almost feels like they forgot what made the spin dash great and what made these games so replayable and so fun. That game is none other than Sonic Lost World. Sonic Lost World had a really weird spin dash. It wasn't necessarily momentum based. It did help you pick up speed, but it really slowed down the pace and it was just very odd to control and honestly just never really felt that great. As well as the rest of the physics in the game, I honestly feel like they are quite lacking. It was nice to see that they made an attempt to really bring this back in a 3D game, but this is not the spin dash that we're used to. This is not going to help you find any shortcuts. It's not going to help you actually build momentum, and flat out, it's really not that fun to use. It's nice to see an attempt, but I would really like to see them return to the more adventure-based spin dash, because that's really what made it great. But after that, you don't really see the spin dash in the 3D games. If you look over here, you do see it in Sonic Boom, but that game was kind of a spin-off. You'll see it in the Smash Brothers games, which obviously goes to show that it's such an iconic move that that's what they choose to associate Sonic with as one of his main attacks. And since Lost World, we haven't seen this return into a 3D game. But in the critically acclaimed game Sonic Mania, the spin dash makes a return in a huge way. The spin dash works as intended. You put your head down, you charge up speed, and then you just go and you gain momentum. Now that's all fine and dandy. This is a signature move of Sonic and we always need this in the games. But this game finally added a unique spin to the spin dash. They added a variation to it called the drop dash, which basically allows you to do a spin dash from a jump. So if you jump up and hold A and charge up the drop dash, when you land, you're going to go into a full speed into a ball. You gain a lot of speed and a lot of momentum doing this, and it allows for much more creative platforming, and it's literally a speedrunner's wet dream. There's a reason why Sonic Mania is so successful. Little moves like this that make the game replayable are what keep you coming back for more. Not only is it just flat out fun to use, it's essential for speedrunning. The last game where the spin dash is featured in any Sonic game is actually Sonic Forces, and I know what you guys are saying. You guys are very critical of that game, and rightfully so. And even though they do make this distinction between the classic and modern Sonic moveset once again, and it's not featured in the main 3D gameplay, I actually do find one of the redeeming qualities of the classic Sonic gameplay, which people were very critical of, was actually the addition of the drop dash from Sonic Mania. For some reason, I'm just really drawn to the drop dash and the spin dash move, as you guys can tell. And for some strange reason, I just really like this feature in Sonic Forces. The classic Sonic gameplay did have these weird physics, but in all honesty, there's just something about this drop dash that just made it a little bit more enjoyable for me. I'm not saying I want this gameplay style to return in a mainline 3D game, but nonetheless, this is the history of the spin dash, and I wanted to show you guys the final game where the spin dash appears.